Okay, so this is a lecture to accommodate for our first summer workshop when we went to Baldwin Creek this summer for the APES class. So if you were not at this summer workshop, then you need to listen to this mini lecture about what we did. We learned a lot. You learn a lot more in the field. And so hopefully this gives you a little glimpse of the experience we had. So this is actually a picture of the people that showed up for this first summer workshop, and we are standing in Baldwin Creek, and this creek is the one that runs adjacent to the Berea Pool on the west side of South Rocky River Drive. This is right across from the Music Mound, if you're familiar with the area in the metro parks there. And what we did was we performed a citizens QHEI, which is a qualitative habitat evaluation of the actual stream. So again, this was in Baldwin Creek, and Baldwin Creek, in any flowing body of water, is considered what we call a lotic environment. It's one that's flowing. And what's interesting about lotic environments is that the abiotic or non-living factors in it, like pH, temperature, dissolved oxygen levels, nitrogen, phosphorus levels, are significantly different than environments that are not flowing, like a lake or a pond, and those environments are called lentic. So there's lentic environments and there's lotic environments. Again, lotic are flowing, whereas lentic are standing. Baldwin Creek is a lotic environment. And what we did in this lotic environment is we performed a monitoring protocol. Now this monitoring protocol is again called the CQHEI, which is like the common person's index. Actual scientists that work for the Environmental Protection Agency or the Ohio EPA, they use a QHEI. So it's like official scientific data. With this one, we're just kind of being citizen scientists and contributing to a larger database for the scientists for the state. So this monitoring protocol provides us with different measures within which we check off the characteristics that the stream has, in-stream habitat, like in the water, and then even the surrounding land use. So I want to show you guys a picture of this Citizens QHEI. Let me just find it here. I meant to put it up here. Okay, so this is just a picture of part of it. And so the CQHEI, we had to put the date in. We had to name the river, obviously, or the stream. And then one of the first measures that we did was looking at the substrate, or the bottom of the creek itself, and how large the rocks were. Then we needed to look for smothering, which I'll explain later. We needed to look for fish cover, the shape of the stream, if it had been altered, and basically what you get are points associated with certain characteristics, and at the end of the CQHEI you actually add it up and you get a score, and that score is what you could classify the stream as a high quality stream, low quality stream, and so on. So one of the measures that we looked at was the riffle, run, and pool areas of the stream. Now a riffle, if you can imagine, is that part of a stream where the water breaks at the surface. And so it's shallower, as you can see in this, and what it does is it breaks the surface of the water. There's larger boulders in here, there's smaller rocks between them and pebbles, and when the water breaks, it actually is really good because dissolved oxygen can get into the water. Now all aerobic organisms need oxygen in the water. So oxygen in the water is called dissolved oxygen, and riffle zones are essential to the health of streams because it's what provides the oxygen. You can kind of consider the riffle as an analogy to our lungs and the ability of our lungs to extract oxygen from the air and to feed our cells. So that's what the importance of riffle zones are. And then, as you can see in this picture here, you have these large aerobic organisms. These are trout that know where to go. They know where to go to get that dissolved oxygen. These are large aerobic organisms that need oxygen. So they're going to go in areas of the stream just downstream of a riffle, which is right here because it's just shallower. And that's because of the oxygen that's there. Now, not only does it provide oxygen, but it provides some quality habitat for a lot of organisms, especially macroinvertebrates, which I will get into later. Okay? Then after a riffle, generally what you have is a run, which is pretty much this area of water that is pretty flat and glides. Sometimes scientists will refer to the run of a stream as the glide of the stream. And then after the run is the pool. And the pool is deeper, or the deepest part of a stream. And this is generally where you'll find larger organisms just because there's more space and habitat for them to live in. So those are the basics of a stream and the anatomy of a stream, if you will. Now, not only did we look at in-stream habitat, but we also looked at areas called like riparian zones. A riparian zone is an area of land adjacent to a stream. So here's our stream, here's our land. And riparian areas are very important in determining the health of a stream based on the presence or absence of vegetation. The more vegetation, the better, because what happens is when it rains on the land, then that rain runs off the land, and when it runs off the land, it carries with it pollutants and soil. But if you have all these wonderful trees in here and vegetation with differing root depths, that actually holds the soil and it filters pollutants, and therefore it reduces erosion. And if you reduce soil erosion, then you improve stream habitat. The number one pollutant in our waterways, you would think, would be like oil, or maybe like some type of toxic paint or something. That's what most people would think. But actually, soil and sediments are the number one pollutant in waterways. And it's because of the way that we use our land, and that's the reason why. So what we have to do is we have to improve our land management practices. So we have to have more sustainable land use practices in the future and planning, because it would directly influence the stream. This next slide I have is one just to give you more of a real picture of land use. So we have all this farmland here and all over here, and here's a stream that is flowing this way, and you can see that we have this buffer around the stream, and this is the riparian zone of this watershed right here. This is vitally important to the health of the stream, because when you have farm, you have lots of fertilizers that they use. You have pesticides and herbicides. I'll just put that for short. And when it rains, this runs off and goes directly to the lowest point on the land topographically, which is the watershed. So if you have this riparian zone here, what that does again is it filters it. Okay? So it filters it and it holds it back. Another common problem is soil. The loss of soil can get into the watershed when it rains. So if the farmers use BMPs, or best management practices, they can actually get tax credits for using their land sustainably. So there's been incentives with the government and with local municipalities to improve land use practices, and by doing that they get a benefit from it, like a tax break. Okay, so that I just wanted to give you a real picture there. Now, I had mentioned earlier something about macroinvertebrates. Macroinvertebrates are, if you've taken zoology or you are going to take zoology, they are the larval stage of insects. And so, well, for most macroinvertebrates that we use to assess streams. And what we can do is we can assess the health of a stream based on the presence or absence or relative abundance of certain macroinvertebrate species. And so they are indicators, biological indicators of a stream and if it's healthy or not. And the Ohio EPA has divided up these macroinvertebrates into types, and each type is based on their ability to withstand pollution. So there's type 1, type 2, and type 3 macroinvertebrates. Type 1 macroinvertebrates are very sensitive to pollution. So if there are pollutants in the water, they will not be there. And an example of one that we actually saw is a caddisfly. Now, caddisflies are really cool. This is the larval stage of a caddisfly. And what they do is they secrete a sticky mucus, and that mucus they use to trap sediments or whatever is in the benthic substrate of the stream, and they make like a little house. So it's like a little tube within which they live. And you'll find caddisfly larvae on the undersurface of rocks in streams. So you have to literally pick the rock up, turn it over, and look for like a collection of leaf debris, stones, whatever. And then if you push that away, what you would find is this little guy in there, or girl, because they are dioecious, separate sexes. And that would indicate to you that that stream is pretty healthy if it's present. It gives you a good clue, okay? So we did find some of these, which is a good thing. Type 2 are species that are somewhat tolerant of pollution. So if there is pollution in the water, like maybe a little bit too much sediment or some oils, the crayfish could survive. And that's an example of one. We actually found a few of those. And then type 3 species are pollution tolerant. So they live in really stressed streams, and that would include leeches. We did find leeches as well. So we found a little bit of everything, and what I'm going to have you guys see is what the students came up with regarding their inventory. And so they'll share with you what they found and what our score was regarding the stream health. Now, one of the things that I want to talk about is smothering. And smothering is when there's sediments in the water. Those sediments will actually get entrapped in the gills of the aquatic organisms. So aquatic organisms have gills, and they use those to breathe. The gills will get clogged with the sediment and silt, and then they die. So if there's more sediment and silt in water, then it's going to cause an increase in death of gill-breathing organisms. Another thing that the sediment and silt does is it decreases the quality of benthic habitat. So here are a bunch of like rocks that I'm drawing, okay, and some pebbles. And these little guys live in the interstitial space of these rocks. It's like quality habitat. Now, if there's a storm and that storm brings with it sediments, those sediments will start to build up in the interstitial habitat. And as those sediments build up, the quality of that habitat goes down, while at the same time reducing populations of gill-breathing organisms. And so it's really important for us to employ land use practices that are sustainable, because what we do on land affects our water, okay? So that's the end of this first summer workshop lecture on our Baldwin Creek experience.